So I watched this video by Professor Anton, hi there Corey, commenting on a video a video of an interview between Richard Dawkins and Satish Kumar as part of Dawkins' Enemies of Reason series, and he seems to be holding up Satish Kumar as an enemy of reason because, well, various reasons, but the bit that Professor Anton illustrates and used in his video is a part where Satish Kumar seems to be, deploying a really kind of simplistic dualism, which is completely non-scientific, non-empirical, doesn't seem to make an awful lot of sense. And I think Corey brings out some aspects of that, which are quite interesting. I want to do something slightly different with that, if I may, because it seems to me that I wouldn't presume to know what Satish Kumar is up to with that, but I think the dualism that he's indicating is problematic. But I suppose first off I should comment on dualism generally, because dualisms have got a bad name. We're not supposed to be dualists. Substance dualists particularly is a bad thing, but we do seem to be natural born dualists, and I'm borrowing that phrase from Paul Bloom in this book, Descartes' Baby, which is a great book, by the way. It's the strapline on it is how child development explains what makes us human. I like Paul Bloom for all kinds of reasons. I think he's a fantastic educator. I love watching him teach. I think he does such a good job in the classroom. But what he kind of points to, one of many things he points out in this book, is that we are. Whilst yes, of course, we know that dualism of all kinds are kind of bogus, and science has to do other kinds of things, we live our lives as if we are indeed natural-born dualists, particularly in the realm of things like body-mind, body-spirit dualism. We act routinely as if beings particularly, but objects more generally, had some kind of essence or some kind of spiritual quality to them. We just do that. And whilst of course we can say, well, that's just nonsense, we don't need to take any notice of that, and of course we shouldn't if we're doing scientific procedures, nevertheless we keep doing it. And the way that we... Be quiet, Phoebe. Sorry, my dog's being a pest. The way that we way that we act in the world is like that, and we're not going to banish that anytime soon. And in many ways, it's actually quite useful, and it gives the life the richness that it has. So that the dualisms that inhabit our day-to-day existence are there for the duration. So let's get used to it. But the particular dualism that Satish Kumar is talking about is I think problematic. Or maybe it's just his way of explaining, because he tries to explain what he calls elements. It's a really unfortunate choice of words he's making throughout this interview. But he says that there are two essential elements, two aspects, he says elsewhere, to existence, which he breaks down into the visible and the invisible. It subsequently transpires that when he says visible, those aspects of the material world which are visible, he means basically apprehensible to the senses. So he's also talking about the tactile, you can touch things or smell things, as Professor Anton points out. He doesn't actually say that which we can hear, although I suspect if he was pushed he probably would. So those things which are apprehensible to the senses, he says, are one category of experience. And then there's this other category of experience which he identifies with the spiritual, which are not apprehensible to the senses. So it's that kind of dualism. The material is that which is apprehensible to the senses, the spiritual is that which is not apprehensible to the senses, with the prototypical sense being sight, hence visual, and non-visual. Big problems with that as far as I'm concerned. Firstly, the idea that which is not apprehensible to the senses is the spiritual means that we have to start treating quarks as spiritual. Is that how we have to do it? Or anything that's in the electromagnetic spectrum which is outside of that thin strip of visible light, everything beyond that is spiritual. I don't feel comfortable with that really. Anything that's has a duration of a shorter period of time than than the human eye can accommodate, the human brain can visualize. Is that going to be spiritual? I don't really like that. Or indeed anything that's extended in time, or too far away to be visible, or moves too fast. I mean, I don't. As I say, I may be making a complete pastiche of what Satish Kumar is talking about here, but that doesn't seem like a viable distinction, really, and an interesting one. If I was going to make a distinction, if I was going to pick up on Bloom and talk about the idea that we are natural-born dualists, and we have a dualism within us, we have a tendency to see the world as divided between the physical and the spiritual, or between the object and the essence, those kind of things. You know, an idea that which doesn't just lie with Bloom, which perhaps is associated with something like the binary operator, which is a function of the brain, which does a similar kind of thing, which you find in De Killy and Andrew Newberg, Eugene De Killy, and other places. If we do this thing of naturally breaking our experience into two parts, and if we do this further thing, which is that we assign the material to one part and the spiritual to the other, I don't think I would choose the visible and the invisible, or the sensorially available and the sensorially unavailable as representatives of those two parts. I would probably choose something to do with space on the one hand and something to do with time on the other. I think that would be more interesting. Now, I would probably, because there are these things we call objects, like this empty beer bottle. It's empty because I've just drank it. Very nice beer, by the way, Old Crafty Hen. This beer bottle is the shape it is and has the sensory properties that it has because I'm measuring it, I'm apprehending it as occupying space, right? And the properties that I'm identifying are its spatial properties, its shape, its colour, its form, those kind of things. But it also occupies time, doesn't it, this thing? And indeed everything does, and indeed I do. And if I was able to, I don't have this sensory engagement, but if I had a sensory capacity to visualise the timeline of this bottle, not only would I see it extruded through space in like that, but I might even see it going way back and see the silicates that are on some beach somewhere from which this was extracted, from which the glass was formed. I might see the timeline of the trees which eventually became pulp and were eventually turned into the paper this label is made of. I might see the processing of the chemicals that eventually formed the ink that made these labels, and so on and so on and so on. So there's a kind of temporal extension which is completely unavailable to me, but which is definitely part of the property of which this bottle is also part. You know, which this is a cross section of, if you like. This is a moment in the timeline of a whole series of different things that's going on, different substances and yeah, that kind of stuff. And that's really interesting to me. You know, the fact and our material engagement with the world is largely an engagement with objects, with things like beer bottles and books and so on, and computers and phones. And we don't. And whilst we, of course, we exist in time, we ourselves are time-bound beings. Every part of our being is time. If I can kind of make a passing glance at Heidegger en route here, you know, our being is itself temporal. You know, being is a verb, isn't it? It's about time. So I suppose if I was going to make a kind of binary distinction, and I was going to assign spirituality to one of those, I would locate spirituality with something to do with temporal extension, with an engagement with time, either a perception of time in its entirety, or an engagement with time from a particular perspective, perhaps, or a conscious rejection of time as something different, an experiential rejection of it. I would do something like that, not the visible, invisible thing, which is essentially now you see it, now you don't. So yes, thank you very much. Don't know if this made any sense at all, just thought I'd have a bash. Thank you very much, goodbye.